Before we dive into the topic of business models, we need to lay the foundation and talk about how we're going to actually run the corporation, how it's going to be owned. What is the corporate structure, so to speak, as you go through? There's really three of them. I want to talk in this section about the two most common ones out there, the sole proprietorship and partnerships as you go through. Sole proprietorships is a business owned, usually managed by just one person as you go through. It kind of lives and dies with that one person. That person wants to retire. The corporation, either it's sold maybe, or it's given to somebody else, or it dissolves as you go through. A partnership, it's a formal legal form of business with two or more owners. And there's a couple different ways you can form partnerships. And then also the big one we're talking about at a different time is called the corporation, which is a different entity, one that we need to really pay attention to as we lay the very roots, the base of our business that we're going to start over here. Once you look at this chart over here, you'll see on the left-hand side, sole proprietorships really dominate the type of business ownership. 72% of all businesses in the United States are sole proprietorships. That said, there's an awful lot of small business, and really, in a lot of ways, they're huge, the giant dynamo that really drives the American economy, also drives a lot of American innovation as you go through. Corporations entail only 20% of businesses and partnerships only 8%. But now look on the flip side of this, on the number of receipts as you go through. Corporations, they only really have 20% of the business entities, but they generate 81% of all the revenues in the United States as well. So they're big, huge organizations. They'll have lots of employees in them as you go through. Their structure is very different than that of a sole proprietorship. A sole proprietorship may be one person working 7 days a week or 5 days a week, whatever it may be. And the corporation's got multiple employees, benefits, huge packages, places to work as you go through. Sole proprietorships only make up 6% of the total revenues, and partnerships only 13%. So that being said, you look at the revenues versus the type of business, you'll see a big difference between them. So in sole proprietorships, it really is easy. You start and say, yo, I'm going to start a business today. And you go out and start selling an item or selling a service as you go through. You get to be your own boss. You have a pride of ownership. You know, even if you have a used car dealership, by the way, that's not a bad idea. It's one of the top 3 recession-resistant businesses, according to the Small Business Administration. Bill's Used Autos, and you drive in and your name is Bill and you see your name up there in lights. It's kind of a cool thing. And then also, once you sit down and you retire from your business or whatever, and it passes on to somebody else, you can leave a legacy as you go through of your business to anybody that you designate after you as you go through. You get to keep all the company profits, and there's no special taxes. It has what we call flow through taxation. So in a sole proprietorship, it accounts as revenue and income in your personal income tax as you go through. That provides a big benefit every year at tax time as you go through. There's a couple problems though. Number one is the critter called unlimited liability. Here's how that works. You have your business and then something horrible happens at your business. Somebody, let's make up a scenario of they slip and they fall and they sue. They sue past the limits of your insurance. You have $2 million in limits. They end up suing and they get $10 million by a jury award. All of a sudden, they take all your business, they take all the insurance from your business, and you're stuck with $5 million left as you go through. Guess where that comes from? It comes from your house. It comes from everything that you own. It comes from your cars. Shoot, it may even come from, I get to own your family and everything else. No, it doesn't go that far. But that being said, they can seize your personal assets to cover that loss as you go through. That's a big deal. It also will apply, as we'll see in just a moment, to partnerships, but there's a pretty easy solution to that as well. The other part about a sole proprietorship is one person, one wall to draw money from. And a lot of times you're juggling so many different things. It's exhausting as you go through. There's a huge time commitment. The only fringe benefits you get are the ones that you buy out there. And it's limited growth a lot of times by your time and your energy. And the lifespan really is there as long as you stay in business, as long as you continue the business as you go through. A partnership, there's 2 general types. And by the way, there are all kinds of variations on these aspects over here. We're covering the most basic models as we go through the system. One is a general partnership. No, it's not about being a general in the army. Okay, it's about actually everybody contributes about the same amount and the same amount of time and the same amount of energy and the same management at the enterprise that you're running. Then you also have a limited partnership. A limited partnership, frankly, works really well. You can sit down, let's say you're somebody that's younger and your parents are supporting you in opening a brand new business. You can say, hey, can you guys spot me for a couple $100,000? Well, hopefully your parents have a couple $100,000 in their wallet. They pull out the wallet and they pass out like $200,000 to you. I wish I had parents like that. But that being said, the reality of a limited partnership is they're limiting the amount of money they're contributing, and they're also not involved on the day-to-day operations. And if there's something that goes wrong with the partnership years down the line, the most they'll be liable for is the amount of money that they put in. So they limit the amount of liability. It's a really smart model, especially if it's a family affair and you want to sit down and limit that and don't destroy somebody's retirement income as you go through. So that being said, you have the general partners are active, and the limited partner, they're not. It depends how it's set up, but they are not active in the day-to-day business, and they have that limited liability as you go through. You know, the one problem that you have with partners is that sometimes they get into fights and there's a lot of division. I know about 11 different partnerships as you go through. Of the 11 partnerships, 5 of them seem to get along fine, even to this day, after some of them being in business together for 17, 18 years. The rest of them, the other 6 I know personally, they don't like each other. As a matter of fact, some of them won't even talk to each other as you go through. Sometimes people get so angry over inequities or perceived inequities in the business that it destroys long-term friendships as you go through. But there's a whole series of different things about partnerships. You know, there's 3 people that I know, they went together as a partnership to renovate an ancient theater back from the 1930s, and 2 of them had lots of money. One of them didn't have any money, but he was brilliant on carpentry skills. So he went through and he took his time, he refurbished the things, and frankly, it returned to its glory back with the beautiful woodwork throughout the whole theater. They replaced a lot of rotted timber. It's stunningly beautiful as they go through and they get along, but they're all equal partners, but one contributes sweat rather than money. We call it sweat equity as you go through. Here's the number 1 rule in partnership: get it all in writing. And that way you can sit down and actually know who does what. Here's another thing: go through and make certain that you and your partner or partners share a lot of different values. Here's the bottleneck: do you trust each other? If you don't trust each other to begin with, I promise you a year later, you'll be at each other's throats as you go through. How does your potential partner, respond to adversity? Does she try to solve the problem or defend their ego? It's about business and it's about making money. Can a person accept constructive criticism? You know, I don't think any criticism is really constructive. I think a lot of it's destructive, but regardless, sometimes you have to have frank dialogue as it's going on. And then how can you build excitement into the partnership as you go through? Here's some basic questions as you go through, but always above things, if you need to borrow $1 from a friend, decide which you need the most, the dollar or the friend. Because a lot of times partnerships end up being business and you lose that whole friendship out of there, and sometimes it goes really bad as you go through. So the advantage of partnerships: there's more financial resources, you get to share management, have pooled skills as you go through, they survive longer, and there still is no special taxes as you go through. So the disadvantage, once again, you get that critter out there called unlimited liability. In another presentation, I'll talk to you about limited liability partnership, which is actually a form of corporation similar to an LLC that really resolves that liability issue. Sometimes you have to argue about division of profits. I worked 70%, you only did 30, I deserve 70%. It's that argument thing as you go through. And then they're hard to terminate sometimes because one person wants to continue on for the next 5 years, the other one wants to retire. So sometimes you have issues like that as you go through. So sole proprietorships and partnerships as you go through, there's a legal issue all the time with liability. There's simple business structures. You have to pay attention to the details as you go through. And partnerships are a little bit better because more minds make better decisions, and more pocketbook means more available cash, at least usually. Anyway, sole proprietorship and partnerships. Take care.